Well, welcome everybody. Really excited to have you join today on this special conversation with Liesl from Axis. If you've been following a bit about what we've been doing to the Facebook group, a lot of our focus has been on supporting you, clinic owner, provider, staff member, in developing the conversion process. How can we consistently get more people into treatment? How can we consistently develop the business development internally within your end? So that as we have marketing generating more potential patients, we have the right flow within the clinic to make sure that we are generating more patients, which is the end mission of why we're all here, helping people get back on track and transforming this mental health epidemic that we're going through. Liesl, thank you so much for taking time out of your day. I know that there's a lot of things we could have been doing on this Wednesday afternoon and you choosing to be here with us. So I acknowledge you and thank you for being here today. If you'd like to, just give a bit of an introduction as to who you are, what you've done before, and what you're doing now within Axis.
Sure. So my name is Liesl Perez. I co-founded Access Integrated Mental Health about 3 years ago with my husband, Chris Perez, really because I really wanted to help people unlock their potential through, mental health treatments. I spent over 22 years in marketing for high-tech companies. I actually launched a sort of a predecessor to ChatGPT 3 years ago. And so I've been working in the AI space actually for quite a long time in the language space. So that was actually what my training and background was in. But as part of, when you're in corporate marketing, one of the things that you do a lot is brand and messaging and those kinds of things. And so, over the last 3 years, there's obviously been a huge influx of mental health issues that have arrived on everyone's doorstep. And, it's especially affected communities of color like mine. And so I was particularly interested in helping communities of color really deal with mental health issues because it's so stigmatized, in those communities. And even though I'm not a clinician, I'm not somebody who, I am TMS certified though, and I do treat patients with TMS. It is important that people actually are given permission to get the help that they need and also to find people they can trust to do it. So that's part of the reason that I got seriously involved with mental health. I also suffered from mental health issues myself. As I said, 3 years ago, I, was riding high and launching this first, version of a generative AI product. And then my boss died, and she was like my best friend, and she was a big part of the driver of that. And so I ended up being severely depressed. With everything that that was going on, and changing jobs, and working in an environment that was not great. Then we had the COVID pandemic. I was responsible for 50,000 employees during that time, all internal communications and external communications. Dealt with 3 strikes, 2 mergers and acquisitions. I mean, if anybody deserved ketamine, it was probably me. And so yeah, so I've gone through the whole experience as a patient, as a clinic owner, as a marketer, as somebody who actually picks up the phones and answers calls for patients who are interested in some of the treatments we have. So I am open for any question that anybody has and wants to ask. Nothing is
Awesome.
off the table.
Awesome. Amazing. Thank you so much, Liesl. And thank you for sharing with us your journey. That's 50,000 employees in internal communications. That is not just any
During a
random.
global pandemic, and also George Floyd.
Wow.
So
Wow.
yeah.
Wow. What a powerful woman you are, and way to step into that leadership. I'm sure that there's a lot that I could learn from your journey, and thank you again for sharing it with us. For anybody that's watching, if you have any questions, you can go ahead and ask them through the Q&A. We'll make sure to be checking that throughout the conversation. So Liesl, so share with us the journey that Axis has been on with Beyond Marketing.
Yeah, actually, I love numbers. I'm a marketer by trade. This is actually, really what I do more than anything else. So I thought the best way to actually do this is to actually show you what my Google Analytics actually looks like. And so what you see here is this top line here. This is all organic search, right? So when we originally hired you guys, this is kind of I think it was actually maybe a little bit earlier than July. I was still working full time in corporate at this point, so I wasn't totally paying attention. You were working with my husband, but you can see that we were like just above and beyond what we were doing, sort of previously. And actually, the height of our intakes, and this is a key number and metric for us as clinic owners, is how many new intakes are we getting each year, and I think, or each week. And so this, when our organic search, there's a relationship between our organic search numbers and also the number of intakes we have. So when we were getting the most intakes, it was here in October. And then at some point, I think my husband had decided to make some changes. I'm a big believer that if it's not broke, why fix it? It wasn't really broke, but he was like, but we could get it better. And so I think at some point, he actually decided that he was going to go with a different marketing agency. That's this dip right here. This is when we weren't working with Beyond. So that wasn't very good. And then I was like, this is terrible. We really can't, like, this is not great, because like November, December, January is actually when people are the most depressed. So you should actually be seeing more traffic and more intakes, but no, that's not what we saw. So we decided to hire you guys back in January. And as you can see, all of the numbers have actually been climbing again. And we are back up to, actually, we have exceeded, even at our height in October, we've exceeded the number of intakes. Our weekly intakes, just week over week, we're exceeding them every single week. So we're back to where we should be. So that tells me that you guys are doing really well. So congratulations. We won't be firing you anytime soon.
Wow. I love to see that. Again, I mean, the metrics for anybody that is watching and you're not mindful of the metrics within the clinic, it's really key to know them. That's why we like to keep them as simple as possible to move.
Yeah, and see, Karen Narwhal there's like, yeah, the holidays is when you should be seeing the most patients and intakes, and like the fact that we weren't seeing any was the issue. And so I was like, and our other agency was like, oh, it's seasonality. And I'm just like, yes, it's seasonality. We should be seeing more people, not less. Freaking cold outside.
The grass is not always greener. And it's amazing to like see it, not just in terms of feeling and being subjective, but being objective in Google Analytics, for example.
Yes. Yeah. I'm a big believer in data. So those are really good data points for me.
Yeah. And the beautiful thing is, though, even if you have the best marketing in the world from, I don't know, Dan Kennedy or Russell Brunson himself, and let's say they're doing your marketing campaigns, none of that matters if you don't have the right patient enrollment process. So, you've worked in marketing before, you've had, your struggles with mental health, as you've shared. So can you talk a little bit about, the sensitive nature of the patient enrollment process, and, how are you kind of switching between, patient enrollment, it's a transaction, it's a sale that needs to take place, and empathetically relating to somebody? How do you kind of balance all that in your head, but still, help people make a positive decision and move forward?
All great marketing really revolves around one thing. And it doesn't matter if you're a high-tech marketer or if you're a mental health clinic marketer, it all revolves around your customer, right? It's about understanding what that audience is, what they want, and giving them what they want and what they need. And I think the other thing that's really important is that what you think they want and need isn't exactly what they want and need. So here's an example. When I started picking up the phones to answer the calls for, and do the lead follow-up on Move, I was thinking, oh, you want to know like how to schedule your appointment. And that's what we're going to be talking about. That is not what we were talking about. What we ended up talking about most of the time actually is insurance. Never would have guessed it, but that is actually what people really, really care about. Because they need to be able, before they can even think about their mental health, they need to be able to know whether or not they can afford it. And in our case, we can actually, because we take Medicaid, we take almost every major insurance. I'm able to, assure them that yes, you can afford this treatment. In some cases, this has actually saved people's lives, right? And that's the thing that I always remember, is that the people who are calling me on the phone are only telling you half the story. And the real impact that we're making isn't just about, oh, I got another intake, right? Like literally, I have people who were, maybe 3 weeks after they started Spravato treatment, were like, I was literally suicidal when I was talking to you. thank you so much for making this possible for me. That's how I balance it, is I realize what the stakes really are. It's not about just the number of intakes. It's about, people's lives are at stake if we don't get this right, and if we don't listen to what they want. But the other side of that token, though, it's because I talk to the patients, and I'm a clinic owner, right? I don't have to be on the phones. I could pretty much outsource this to a VA if I wanted to. But I actually would recommend every single clinic owner out there get on the phones at least one day a week, because you will learn things about your patients that will help your business be a better business. And in my case, like some of those numbers that you're seeing in the analytics I just showed you was because I realized that people want to know about insurance and how much this costs. So guess what I did? I optimized a bunch of blog posts for how much ketamine, infusions cost, how much Spravato infusions cost, or Spravato treatment costs, how much TMS costs, what are the differences between those treatments. And that's actually helped us become more visible to our community, which has increased our intakes. So it's kind of a virtuous cycle, in the sense that the more that you know your patients and your audience, the better your marketing can be.
Nothing like market research of the owner getting on the phone and speaking to the patient. So yeah,
it's not a waste of time. I mean, it feels like a waste of time at first, because you get a lot of people who are like, I don't know, they want weird things and whatever. But if you talk to enough patients in a week, you understand exactly that, like, okay, there's more here that we can actually that we need to provide up front, before someone even talks to you. And that optimizing that part of the funnel is actually really, really critical, so that you can get better quality leads coming in.
For sure. And that's such a key point, because you're leveraging knowing the data to then being able to integrate it into getting it to the people, so people get more connected to it and ultimately drive more action, more conversion, more performance. Now, you obviously have a background in this, so you know what to look for. For a lot of providers that don't have the background that you have, corporate marketing expert, what would you recommend for them to look for, or to, as they're talking to people, pick up the phone once a week? What would you recommend for them to be really mindful of so they can integrate it themselves?
I think that a couple of things that come to mind, like, figure out what people are actually asking about. What do they want to talk about, right? Always put the patient first before anything else, and don't push your agenda. Don't try to sell. Don't try to tell them about your treatments. Just ask them how they're doing. I think another thing that I found is, asking patients whether they prefer text or phone is actually a really important question to ask. Some people are actually more comfortable being on text, and quite frankly, you want them on text. They spend, because you can deal with a lot more people if it's via text than you can if it's on the phone call. And a lot of people actually consider that to be just as good. And you can also send them links to your information into your website as well that can help them, do a deeper dive. So that increases your authority as well. So you're not just trying to sell them something. Plus, it's just less time that you have to spend, on the phone, away from other things that you could be doing. But those are some of the things I think are really important. You kind of have to lead the patients on the journey, because a lot of people don't even know the difference between, like, therapy versus psychiatry versus, a PMHP versus, they don't care about any of that stuff. They just know that they have a problem right now and they're hoping you can help them solve it. And so you have to lead them on that journey.
Oh, so can you share with us how you go ahead and lead people on that journey?
I immediately text them with, like, hey, what do you have questions about? Like, do you want to know how much it costs? Because most of them do. And I give them like 4 choices, right? How much does it cost? How much does insurance cover? What's the other 2? What's the experience like? And then how do I sign up? And I'd say, a good percentage of the people that I just text that to will immediately say, yeah, all 4 things. I'm like, great. I have a pre-canned answer, copy paste, done. And, then they book. So that's like in the best case scenario. And that's happened quite a few times where I'm like, great, I didn't have to spend half an hour on the phone with you guys. You did it yourself. You already know. I have pre-canned responses to pretty much, any of these questions. And then sometimes I'll just, because I don't have a lot of time, I'll ship it off to an assistant to, follow up on these things. But that's pretty much how I lead them on that journey, is
Gotcha.
give them, and it's great because you can prepare for that, right? You can just send them links and patient interviews. I send them YouTube videos of like, here's a patient talking about how much they like working with us.
Mm.
So.
Mm. So and it's again so key to understand what people are asking, because you can create the templates that you can just copy and paste. Now, in an off scenario, because the best case scenario, somebody reads the messages, watches the videos, gets engaged, they get bought in, and at that point they book. How about on the other side, when somebody isn't necessarily bought in right away and you need to nurture them? What does that nurturing look like from Access and from yourself?
Actually, it's what I really like about Beyond. You guys have kind of like made that easy for me. I don't really have to do that much because you guys have the emails and whatnot. That Move can do. So even though, I mean, my primary interaction is on the text and phone channels, but the email channels are also something that you can continue to nurture someone with. And it's like there's nothing that you have to do for that. I think you guys can also do reactivation campaigns. So, for everybody that's come into your system over the last 3 months, you can send them new content. I'm planning on creating an ebook right now, like a therapy guide for, the various treatments we have. And people can download that. So that's something that I'm going to try to reactivate in, a couple months. Just to kind of keep people, going. But, some people will do the quizzes, for instance, and they're not like, they just want to see if they're depressed. It's like, you kind of know you are,
Mm.
but they don't really want to do anything about it. So those aren't really patients for you, and that's okay. Like, don't get personally offended if somebody is like, stop, don't text me anymore. They just did you a favor. It means you have to waste no
Mm.
time on them. They're never going to be a customer. Focus on the people who actually do want to be customers.
Yeah. And you brought up a really good point earlier. You mentioned about how you send people like a video testimonial of someone who's been through the clinic. So can you talk a little bit about like, how do testimonials play a role in your overall marketing and growth strategy? And how do you go about getting more testimonials?
Yeah, and this is something that actually honestly, we've just been getting them organically. People just really love our clinic so much that they word of mouth is huge for us. But we also have like a ton of Google reviews as well. And so, I think there's a lot of ways to do that. Like, I'm actually starting to put, cards into the room with like, you know, uh like journal prompts and things like that, and saying, if you like us, leave us a Google review. So you have to ask patients. It helps that I actually sit at the front desk a lot of times, and I'm like, hey, how did you hear about us? And they'll tell me. I'm like, great. Well, if you had a great experience today, definitely leave us a Google review, and our patients just are really happy to do that. So.
Wow, that's amazing. So a tiny quick plug. We just hired a brand new medical director. He's going to be on. We're going to be doing a huge series on this, on the console and how to run the strategic choreography in the office. But the reason I bring that up is because it reminds me of a conversation him and I were just having this morning about, literally, what do you do from the moment somebody walks in the door until, moving them to a treatment room, running through the consultation. So would you be able to talk about your process in that? Someone walks in, what happens, and what goes on in the clinic?
Sure. I mean, for us, treatment starts the minute that you walk through the door. There are things that people will say to front desk that they will not necessarily tell their psychiatrist, but it's all part of their mental health. So everyone in our clinic is actually trained to listen very well to what patients are saying, what patients are doing. Here's an example. I had a patient on Saturday that came in and was obviously over medicated. That is problematic for many, many reasons, especially if they're going to be doing Spravato or ketamine infusion afterwards. And, I had to make sure that, like, all the providers knew, like, this is maybe somebody we shouldn't be treating today. You need to make a medical decision on this because this is, like, problematic. So from the minute somebody walks in, we are paying attention to how people are behaving, how people are talking, how people are, are they having a good day or are they having a bad day? If I'm seeing somebody who's like really having a bad day, I will let the provider know right away. This person needs some extra help and an extra attention. And so somebody will sit in our clinic, our provider will bring them back to their, one of their treatment rooms. Let's just say it's Spravato. We have zero gravity chairs. We have, eye masks, fuzzy blanket. I mean, it's like a day spa experience, is kind of the way we want people to feel. And then the provider will come in and they'll talk to the patient, make sure that, what's going on. We get very close to our patients. Our patients are love our staff. We will spend the time listening to them and understanding what's going on for them on that particular day and making sure that, we can make them as comfortable as possible. I'm also a big believer, patient prep is like 80% of the experience. I've had patients who have come in and like they've done great every other time. They've been coming to us for like months, right? Then all of a sudden they're like, I'm having such a bad experience today and I do not understand why. And I'm like, what were you listening to last night? Or what did you watch last night or on your way here? Like, well, true crime. And I'm like, that is definitely not the way we want to prep you, right? So definitely coaching the patients ahead of time. And even what the provider says, the provider demeanor can make a huge difference on that patient's experience. Like, I'm gonna be honest, I have bad days too. I try to meditate before I even come into the office. Whatever is happening outside of the office stays outside of the office because I need to be present for these patients. Even the front desk staff needs to be present for these patients. Whoever's going into the treatment room with them, they cannot have this negative energy because you can catch feelings, right? It's a real thing. And so, I've had patients who I've had to say to them, I had a patient, true story, this just happened the last 2 weeks. He's like, I don't know, that first treatment, it was really demonic and all of these things. And I'm like, whoa, there's a lot going on here. And his second treatment, I actually went in and I said, okay, you have permission to actually, enjoy this experience. You have the permission. You came here for a reason, and you need to understand that this is important for you to let this go and that you are safe. And so after that experience, I said, how did it go this time? It's like, thank you so much for giving me that permission. It's like, I still kind of had this like sort of negative, but that like, I noticed there was like this jelly layer over it and it was like far more pleasant. And I'm glad that there's like, I have hope that this could be better for me in the future. So it's those kinds of nuances that make a huge difference. It's not just the medication. Like mental health, this is our motto. Mental health is more than meds. It's everything that goes into, from when that patient walks in to when that patient walks out.
Which is the idea of setting in the right set, and then the right setting within the
setting an
context.
intention. Setting an intention is absolutely critical to differentiating yourself from your competition.
On that note, and I was thinking the same thing, Sebs. I'm so happy you said set and setting, because we hear about this. What you described, we hear that called set and setting a lot in the ketamine or the oral ketamine space. You also alluded to, and I'm just going to paraphrase / summarize, setting expectations. Yes. How important is setting expectations for the patients as part of them having a great experience?
It is, as I said, patient prep is like 80% of the experience. I think it's also important to demystify the experience. And like lately, I have gotten a ton of patients who've come in and who've been like, well, according to Reddit, I don't even know where to begin with that. But actually, I know where to begin with that. I'm writing a blog about why you shouldn't believe everything on Reddit, but it's got good volume, so I should be getting some good SEO from that. But it's important to demystify the experience for the patients. A lot of patients will be like, I don't know, I'm not feeling anything right now. It's really funny because on Spravato's website, it's like, the negative outcomes can be, you might be dissociated. And it's like, no, that's actually, people think it's a negative outcome when they're not dissociated on the treatment. So, but, a lot of people, because maybe what they drank a glass of wine the night before or something like that, or they have some sort of medication that's interacting with the Spravato or the ketamine or whatever. It's important that patients realize that just because you're not dissociating doesn't mean you're not getting the effect. You are absolutely, it's still working even if you're not dissociating, and you may actually stop dissociating after a while. That's happened too, but it doesn't mean that the treatment's not working. I mean, same thing with TMS. It's some people who will see that like in the second week of TMS, there's sometimes a dip. People are more depressed in the second week. And I have to like coach them through that and let them know that like, this is normal, stay with it. It's still going to be okay. Right. So I think it's really important that you prep the patients, you know, in advance of what they can expect, because there are periods where they're going to be a little bit less and then they're going to be like, oh my God, it's not working. It's like, no, it's totally working, but it takes time. It's not an overnight fix, which some people also believe. They think that they're going to do, you know, Spravato and it's like, everything is going to be better. It's like, well, there's not enough ketamine in the world to fix some of the problems in your life. You know, like, if you're in a shitty marriage or a bad job or whatever, you're going to need to like fix that. And you might realize that with, you know, ketamine, but that problem is still there until you do something about it. And then same thing with TMS. Some people think that TMS is like, oh, this is going to fix my brain permanently. Well, it might, but you might also need like a, you know, a touch-up treatment in a couple of years. Like that, we don't know, you know, and it's important that people understand that this isn't, there's no magic miracle bullet thing that's going to happen to you because you started, you know, treatment. You have to do the work.
Totally, which is what happens behind closed doors is going to make the efficiency of the treatment actually show itself over the long term.
Yeah.
And creating that patient experience and making sure people finish their treatment, because that's one of the things that we hear pretty consistently. They start but they don't finish. Do you and Access, do you guys give people like a framework or a roadmap or like maybe a booklet, something to equip them before they even begin treatment?
Yeah. I definitely, we definitely give them like a worksheet of just like things that you need to know. It's changing though. Like here's a fun fact. We had somebody who tried Kava before they came in for Spravato, and I guess on Reddit, again, shit that you shouldn't believe on Reddit. If I had a nickel, I wouldn't even have to own a clinic. No, but you know, I don't think he was doing this specifically to increase the effects or the length, the duration of ketamine. But there are rumors that that's if you take Kava with like ketamine, you can somehow, you know, increase your the duration of experience. As it turns out, that's actually not what happened. It just made the experience miserable for this patient. Like this patient just threw up like a ridiculous amount. We had like an IV, you know, bag in him, and it was not a pretty sight. So there's definitely things I'm going to be adding that to my worksheet. Like, do not take herbal supplements before ketamine thinking that it's going to make it better. Like, it's not. This is what's actually happened. And you should continue to have that. And like, yeah, I send those out all the time to the patients. It's part of just the check-in and prep process. I think the other thing that's actually really important, we have started putting during the check-in process, how are you getting home? The transportation plan. We've had some patients who've actually driven to the office and driven out. I was like, oh my God, that's like enough for people. I mean, we actually sent out a notice saying, we will kick you out of the program because we are not losing our license. You signed paperwork saying you were not doing this. And so that's a very delicate subject. But
Absolutely.
Yeah, it looks like I have some questions too on the Q&A. Do you want to answer those?
Yeah, sure.
I'm happy. Yeah. So the first question is from Jill. How do I get Spravato on board for my ketamine practice as a CRNA in Pennsylvania? We actually are going to be coming out with consulting on this because we get a lot of questions about this. We can follow up afterwards if you want, and we can definitely have that conversation with you. It's not an easy it is not an easy process. And I'm going to tell you right now, if you're not doing Spravato in a certain volume, it's like just not worth it because it's the amount of paperwork you have to do, the amount of clinical staff you have to, have working on it is ridiculous. And then the second question is how are you getting insurance to cover ketamine? Insurance does not cover ketamine infusions. And honestly, I still don't know how anybody's getting, insurance to cover ketamine infusions. We have never been successful at it. We've tried. Just straight up honest on that one. We are, Spravato is covered, however. So, and then with the, even Medicaid, Colorado Medicaid even covers Spravato. But again, lots of paperwork that goes with that. And there's a lot of gotchas that come with Spravato. So, just, it's not an easy process by any
Sure.
stretch of the imagination.
To bounce off of the idea of volume, because being able to generate more leads over the long term can potentially lead to more patients. So do you use any other sort of marketing platforms outside of what we do for the marketing, and anything that you do to supplement getting your word out there more in your community?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely use Bright Local for local SEO. That's a great tool. I use ChatGPT all the damn time. I know people are like, yeah, no, like, this is lazy marketing. And I'm like, no, this is just marketing.
Google came out with a statement saying they will not penalize content that is written by AI. So it actually
Yeah.
helps you be a lot more productive. And we use stuff with AI too. Like I wrote a blog today with AI, and but I went back in and I knew what I wanted my H1s and H2s to be for SEO. So I did
Yep.
that. So it really should be viewed as like a supplement, not like a replacement.
It's a productivity tool. I mean, honestly, that's what it is. And I would not, now it's not, don't use ChatGPT to go from like, to a finished product. It is not there to as a finished product. You have to go like, and don't let an intern go and like read through all of the blogs and edit it. No, that is not. Definitely have someone who knows their shit to actually read through what ChatGPT, GPT like hallucinated for you. But I definitely use those kinds of tools all the damn time, to get out there and, um, manage the amount of stuff that we need to get done on a daily basis.
I mean, this is the idea that if you're going to be, I mean, times are moving. It's like, I remember when Instagram first came out years ago, at first it was like, what is this thing? Just pictures. Okay, whatever. People that started to learn it back then now are living life off of social media. And we have
Yeah,
these generative AI tools that are, like you just mentioned, they're productivity tools.
yeah. And there's, despite what anybody says, there is no way for you to know if it was AI generated or not.
Yeah.
Like there is no way. And I mean, especially if you're editing through it, there's no way. But I don't just, the other thing I was going to say is don't just use ChatGPT for like content generation. Use it for idea generation, right? That's what I actually use ChatGPT more for than anything else. It's like, I want to know about all the, what topics would you think would be important to optimize SEO for these terms, right? These are the kinds of things that I think are really important. I also think SEMrush super important for us. Like I use SEMrush almost every single day. This helps me with my SEO. It gives me my topic clusters. It gives me how my competition is doing, domain authority, all of those things, ideas for citations, things like that. And I mean, at this point, I mean, I used to run a team of 67 people for marketing alone, right? And now I'm like one person. So, and beyond, I've got me and beyond. So that's like 10, people right there. But, yeah, I mean, it's important that you do automate some of these things because it's really hard otherwise. And actually, Adrian, my account manager, has been like ridiculously helpful in that sense. He'll be like, Liesl, we could automate this stuff for you. I'm like, can you tell me more? Stop whispering sweet nothings into my ear, Adrian.
He's a magician, that guy, for sure.
For
These
sure.
are on the sales and marketing end, to get to bring it into the idea of, again, conversion, which is something that is really important for clinics so that they can bring more people on. What kind of because sales is a continuous process. This is something that over time, the more that you do it, the more you understand what can be improved upon, the more that the areas that are not working. So what do you specifically do? Like, how do you go about measuring those KPIs and making sure that you are actually progressing forward and not just in this loop of doing the same thing over and over again?
Yeah, I mean, okay, so for me, it's revenue. I mean, because I'm a clinic owner, like that's actually what I care about, right? And I mean, to give you an idea of just, kind of how busy I am, I also treat patients in the afternoon. So like half my day is actually spent on patient care, and then the other half is like spent on, marketing and dealing with just clinic, business and whatnot. And so what's important is at the end of the day, am I making money? Because I don't care how many likes I got on Facebook. I don't care how many, bleeds came in. If these are not the people who are actually booking intakes, if I'm not seeing intakes going up, then it doesn't matter. Like, quit wasting your time on this dumb shit that doesn't matter, right? Focus on, am I getting more intakes and more leads, right? And that's, and it could be things that are, I had an idea the other day. I haven't tested this yet. I'll let you know maybe in a couple months. But like, I had this idea of doing like movie theater advertising because it's local. Like, if your clinic is near a certain movie theater in a certain, zip code, it's actually not that expensive to like go and market in a movie theater. But you got to make sure that that's actually like, okay, if I did this activity, did I get a rise in intakes? Because if I didn't, then it doesn't really matter, right?
Back to data.
Yeah, it's back to the data. Take a look and see where are you actually correlating, certain things. And as much as this is going to drive my husband totally crazy, but like, marketing is somewhat, inefficient science. So you can't really necessarily totally say, okay, because I did this one thing, it's totally going to lead to X amount and increase in intakes. Like, there's a little bit of fuzziness in that relationship, but you can take a look at like the analytics I'm looking at and like overlay other things that you were doing at a certain point and just, like, I know exactly when I introduce certain tools, and I know exactly how much our traffic rose during that period, and then I can also correlate how much extra intakes we were getting because of that. So
amazing. So this makes me wonder, right? Like, you are an integral part of the business. Number one, you're an owner. Number two, your husband is the doctor. How important would you say it is for someone who has the same capacities that you do to be in the role that you're playing, especially when it comes to, that patient intake?
I think it's actually really important. I mean, and mind you, I still, even though I'm still on the calls because it's important to me to talk to the patients. I've actually created scripts that allow other people to actually step in to do this. So it's scalable. It's not just, me doing this all the time. I am actually scaling this out to virtual assistants and whatnot. But it just doing the task isn't as important as knowing what the task actually is. And what I mean by that is that I could write a script and just send it out and just be like, call these 15 people, right? But that's not actually the task. The task is understand what your audience actually needs and give them what they need. And that is separate because that's, in my case, what my big aha moment. And actually, to be honest with you, I'm actually embarrassed as a professional marketer for over 20 years that I like didn't do more cold calls. I actually went to a conference, the Revenue Marketing Summit, like a couple of weeks ago, and it was like, all y'all in this room, you need to be actually on the phones with your salespeople, at least like a little bit, because you're gonna learn a whole lot. But like, my audience needs to understand if they can afford treatment. That's actually the most basic thing they need to know. They don't need to know about how Spravato works or how like to reset the NMDB receptors or the default mode network. Okay, we can say all of those words. Patients don't give a fuck. They just don't. They care about feeling better.
We're gonna have to leave that out on the recording.
Yeah, sorry. You there's going to be a lot of those, I'm sure. But that is the real talk here, right? You are here to help your patients. And if you're not helping your patients, like, with what their basic needs are, you're never going to get to all of that other stuff. And so that's what really matters at the end of the day. Understand what your patients actually need and what they want.
Amazing. I want to backtrack to something really key you said about like delegating and creating a system around, you have this skill set, you have this passion, this fire. And yes, that definitely makes a difference because we have an appointment setter and I tell them, hey, you are the first voice. You are the first impression of what people experience of Beyond Marketing, of Access Mental Health. And it's so, so important. So, but talk to us about how you start to systemize and delegate that. And and like you alluded to, the thought process behind that. So why systemize it? Why delegate it? And what's been your process in doing that?
Yeah, I think for me, it's been a system or a series of sort of adjustments. Like, I had an initial script, and then as I've been actually talking to people in real time, I've actually been adjusting that script, to to kind of, as I've seen what actually has worked or hasn't worked. So for instance, like that idea of like asking, do you want to text or do you want to call, was one of those adjustments I made, because I realized that people don't want to be on the phone. And when you think about this, okay, just think about like, and I'm old, so I'm used to using a phone, right? I remember when phones had like rotary, yeah, dial pads and whatever. And I say, if I'm talking on the phone, I do this, and whereas my kids will do this, right? Like totally different generational issues there. But you have to remember that when people are talking, like it's they're the ones who should be driving the experience, not you, right? So I've actually gone, and as I've had these conversations, I realize, okay, these different generations want different things. They are talking in different ways. We need to adjust to that. And I've adjusted that script accordingly. The other thing that I've done, and I think this is really super basic, but apparently nobody had done this until I had started talking to our assistants. Give your assistants a tour of the space, like literally, even if they're virtual, right? I walked around with a computer and I said, this is where the treatment rooms are. This is what's in the treatment rooms. This is what happens when people come in, and literally walk them through the experience. I have shared with them stories of people who have literally are here today because somebody picked up the phone and answered their questions and got them into treatment immediately, right? Mm. That is super powerful. Like sharing those stories, of course, HIPAA compliant, all of the usual litany of things that you have to, say for HIPAA, but letting them know like the impact that they've made has really, has carried the mission forward, and why this is so important to us. It cannot be said enough. Like literally, this is life-saving. This is not just appointment setting. This is possibly, somebody might be here tomorrow because you picked up that phone and set that appointment for them.
It's having that vision, that purpose behind it all to drive the consistency of text messages.
Exactly. If you're very mission driven, and people understand your vision, the revenue will follow. But unless your vision happens to be, I'm just going to make a lot of money and I'm going to be rich and I'm going to bugger off. Like that's that's not a very inspiring mission. Like definitely figure out what your mission is and learn how to, inspire people with that.
No doubt. You mentioned something at the beginning of the conversation, and you mentioned something just now that I want to make sure it's clear. So it's meeting people where they're at in the way in which they communicate, but also you mentioned the idea of leading the conversation and being the one to also kind of drive the conversation. Can you make that distinct so people don't confuse them?
Yeah, I mean, you have to give the patient choices because a lot of times they don't even know what to ask. They're interested in helping their depression, right, somehow, or their mental health issue. But it can be challenging to understand how to even navigate that conversation. How do I talk to a perfect stranger about the fact that I'm sad and depressed? How do I, encapsulate everything that has happened in my life in the last 3 years that, has led me to this place? Like, that's what people are thinking. And so by making it simple for them to kind of start the conversation, like, do you want to know what we offer? Do you want to know, like, don't get into the nitty gritty of, default mode network. The beginning of a conversation with, with a patient, get into the feelings, right? Then we can get into the actions afterwards, but like get into what they're actually feeling and simplify, make it easy for them. Another thing that a lot of depressed patients tell us, actually, I talk to a lot of moms too. A lot of moms are calling for their kids. And I'm not talking about like 16-year-olds. I'm talking about they're calling for their kids who are like 30 years old. And the reason that they're calling is because when you're depressed, doing basic things like appointment setting is really hard. Doing basic things like intake paperwork is super hard. So making it easy for people to move forward in baby steps is sometimes the easiest way to get them to like book an intake.
Totally. I mean, we have a couple of philosophies, and one of them is the more hurdles you have, the less action people will take. So how can we get rid of any hurdles as much as possible?
Exactly. Frictionless experience is the easiest thing. To make people, make it easy for them to book, make it easy for them to understand what they're getting into,
Yeah. And you also point to another one that we have in regards to driving action, building urgency, to communicate to people's emotions over their logic. because as humans, we make decisions based on emotions, justify them based on logic. So you have a conversation with somebody, it's all information based. You're gonna flood them with information, and then they're gonna hang
Yeah.
up the phone, be overwhelmed, and then completely
Yeah.
forget they even had a conversation with you.
Yeah. And this is why I love text. I mean, this is why text I think is more scalable than just like phone calls, because when you have text and you have those pre-canned answers and you have links to your website and to your content, to your reviews and things like that, it's a lot. People can go and explore it on their time when it's convenient for them. Make sure all your content is mobilized or is optimized for mobile phones, by the way. This is another piece of advice, but because that's super important. But yeah, like doing it over text, people can go back and look at it when they're ready, and then they can, I've had people who come back to me. Like I had somebody yesterday who texted me who I haven't talked to in like 3 weeks, and they're like, "Okay, I'm finally ready."
Wow.
Okay, go ahead and book. You can book online.
All in times. I love it. As we close off, Liesl, where do you see this space going, and how can a provider set themselves up for success as it continues to expand?
Okay, so with Ryan Haight being on the agenda right now for in-person clinic visits, I think there's definitely going to be a lot of these telehealth startups, and I've talked to a lot of them actually, because some of them have tried to recruit me. I'm like, yeah, no, I'm actually not interested. But that we got into this like real rush, this sort of wild west of online prescribing, and I think as they roll back some of the COVID era rules and regulations with prescribing, people are gonna need to start seeing the providers like once a year again, and so that's where is the space going? I think you're definitely going to be seeing a need for more inpatient clinics, because you're not going to be able to just do, I mean, I don't know how Mind Bloom is going to survive in the future. If, everything you can't really just prescribe stuff like that online anymore. So yeah, so I think, providers and clinic owners are probably going to be doing well if they're actually in person. And have an actual physical location. But that also means like that's going to change your expansion strategies. For instance, like, if you're going to want to go into other states or things like that, it means you're going to have a DEA, you're going to have your and physical location, you're going to have providers there, increases your labor costs, things like that. I mean, there's a lot of that kind of stuff that you have to think about now.
Awesome.
So Liesl, you've obviously shared with us, how you guys have been massively successful. We could tell by, your demeanor, your attitude, how you carry yourself, and by the Google Analytics. Someone who's just getting started in your position in the patient enrollment coordinator, who's making the call, booking the intakes. If you were to give them, a 1, 2, 3, recipe for success, or here's how you get started. Let's say it's someone's inexperienced or someone who's performing well at it. What would be your roadmap to help them get up to speed for success?
1, start with a script, right? Don't think you're going to wing this. You're not. Have your script ready, so that when you're talking to patients, you know immediately the kind of the key points you want to make, also the key responses you want to make. You want to be able to copy, paste, and drop it into a text as you're talking to them, right? So have a script. 2, adjust that script as you become more and more experienced and you're understanding what people are asking about. Adjust your script so that you can actually, meet those demands a little bit more easily. It's important also for somebody who's an intake coordinator to understand exactly what does insurance cover, what are the different, types of insurance out there. What does your clinic offer? Understand all of those key parts about your business. And then I think the last point, and this one's the hardest one to do, prepare to get vulnerable. I mean, this is, I think they're in Western medicine in particular. There's a tradition of really separating from the patient and just, having a real clinical experience or whatnot. We're talking about mental health here. All right. We're talking about people having their worst days ever and thinking of ending it all. Like, now is not the time to get clinical. Now is the time to get vulnerable, get comfortable with your own flaws and your own issues and the times in your life when you weren't at your best, and use that to help empathize with your patients, because that's what actually builds the bridges, and that's what actually can get somebody into treatment, is when they feel like they can trust you because they know that you've been through what they've been through as well. So prepare to get uncomfortable.
Wow. If it were easy, everyone would do it. And
Yeah, it's true.
that's beautiful. I feel like that's a great takeaway. Absolutely.
Great.
Liesl, thank you so much for sharing so much here on the conversation. I mean, from interpreting data, collecting data, being mindful of what people are saying, taking all of that, incorporating into your process, having a really clear set and setting intention for people coming to the clinic so that they have a really powerful experience. Thank you for sharing all of this information. If anybody has any questions you're sharing before around having some sort of consulting support for people, what is the best way for people to reach out to you?
Yeah, you could. I'm going to type this over here in the webinar chat. You can actually reach out to me. That's my email address right there.
Cool.
Happy to talk to anybody and, share experiences, and yeah, we can go from there.
Awesome. We'll also have all this. We'll have this also sent out to people so they can go ahead and we'll have a replay sent out to everybody with your email. If anyone has any questions, like you just listened to Liesl, a lot that there's still learn. There's still a lot that we can still create together. So there's a lot that's still available for everybody to do.
And last thing, Liesl, we would love to take this opportunity to invite you to our retreat house in Denver, Colorado for the MAPS event.
Yay! I'm down.
12 of the Beyond Marketing team members out there, and then we're one of the sponsors at the Psychedelic Sciences show. So for everyone who's watching this live or recorded too, we'd love to meet you at the event, and we would love to come maybe see your clinic too.
Oh yeah, you're welcome. You guys are all welcome. Everyone's welcome to come visit whenever they want.
Amazing.
All right.
Amazing. Well, thank you, everybody. Have a great day. Thank you, Liesl.
Thanks, Liesl.
Bye.
Yeah.